The day was August 16th, 2019. It was a Friday. I got up at 3 a.m. like I did every morning to get ready for our show that starts at 4:30. I went downstairs, and my husband, Travis, did like he did every morning. He laid out coffee and my breakfast. But this day was different. It was my birthday. So in addition to that, he'd left me gifts and a card. Later on that morning, he got our kids ready for school, got him up, got him dressed, fed him, kissed them goodbye. That was the last time any of us ever saw him. He was 44 years old. My husband killed himself on my birthday, which, if I think about it, is outrageous. We were happy. We were happy. He was educated. He was a successful physical therapist. He had 2 master's degrees and a doctorate. He had wonderful parents. It made no sense. But I've come to realize now that my husband didn't kill himself because it was my birthday. He killed himself because he simply couldn't live another day. And I know that now because he left a paper trail. My husband and I have been married for 15 years, 2 months shy, in fact. And as embarrassing as it is to say it, I never knew he suffered from depression. My guess is he was clinically depressed, but he was active, he was engaged. He got more done in a day than I ever did. But I look at him now. Pictures of him on our son's birthday, or at Christmas, or sitting in a restaurant in Tokyo. He looks miserable. And our children singing him happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Jerry.
I don't know how I could have been so blind. It's as plain as day, and it haunts me. I told you Travis left a paper trail, and a couple weeks after he died, I found these. They're notebooks he'd been writing in since 2016. They're a window into his mind and a side of my husband that I never knew. One entry that's particularly stunning reads, "I have to choose to let my pain consume me or find strength in the pain and find a purpose in my life." My husband was a master at hiding his depression. He never talked about being in pain. He never talked about seeing himself as a complete and utter failure, but it's there. It's in his journals. He called it the bully in his brain, and that bully was relentless. It refused to surrender its power over him. And I think about the man I knew and the qualities that made him such a great husband and father, and I realized so much of who he was fueled by his depression. Nothing was ever about Travis, ever. All he ever wanted to do was to make us happy. But the problem is, I don't think he knew how to make himself happy. I used to tell him all the time how much I loved him and how thankful I was to be married to him. And in those last few years, he would say to me, "Are you sure? There's 7 billion people in the world." And I thought that was such a funny thing to say. I didn't understand why he said that, but I get it now. He didn't feel like he deserved to be loved. This is where I could rattle through a list of statistics that show the link between depression and suicide, but I'm not going to do that because Travis is the statistic. This is his story of how he tried to pull himself out of that hole of depression. After he died, I checked the browser history on our computer. I was astounded at the breadth of research that he had done on suicide and depression. There were hundreds of journal articles. And I found out later that the day before he died, he spent 12 minutes on the phone with the National Suicide Hotline. But when he came home from work that night, he didn't say a word to me. There were times in our marriage I knew Travis was struggling, but it was always centered around his job. He thought he should be further along in his career, and to me, that is an easy problem to solve. You just change your circumstance, right? And so I'd encourage him to do other things. Anything deeper than that, he would say he didn't want to talk about it. It made him feel weak. And I let him get away with that. But there was one conversation that we had about a month before he died that was a little raw. It was the first time he gave me any indication that his depression wasn't situational. It was more systemic. It was coming from within, who he was and how he felt about himself. And to be honest, it scared me. And the next morning, he left me this note. Lori, I love you. You're a goofball husband. And that's what Travis did. He downplayed it. He didn't seem to worry, so I didn't worry. It wasn't until after he died I realized just how serious his depression was, but it took him dying to get me there. Please don't be like me. Don't let the person you love talk you out of your concern for them. I don't blame myself for my husband's death. I blame myself. I was so blind to that illusion that he created. I didn't act fast enough to get him help. My therapist is a professor at the University of Utah. She's an expert in mental health. She often says if only people would view depression like they do cancer. Depression is a medical diagnosis that deserves medical treatment. Depression is not a character flaw. Depression is not a weakness. You are not a goofball, and trust me, you are not going to snap out of it. 3 years of journal entries prove he could not dig himself out of that hole. So how do you silence that bully in your brain? I am not an expert, but I know this. You can do everything right to get yourself through a day of depression. But what happens on that one day you just don't want to work so hard anymore? Who's going to carry you through? For Travis, that person should have been me. But I didn't know. If you hear anything from me, please hear this. Tell someone you love you're struggling. Yes, tell a professional, but tell someone you love. I knew something was wrong that morning. I didn't know something was that wrong. Had I known more, I could have done more. I'm not here to romanticize suicide or make a martyr out of my husband. What he did and what he failed to do to get help is not okay. No family should go through the pain, the heartache, and the disbelief that we have gone through. People talk a lot about suicide. They don't often talk about the people who are left behind. And the worst moment of my life was not the police telling me that my husband was dead. The worst moment of my life was telling our children what happened to their father. Thankfully, I had help. The head of KSL got me in contact with the woman who's now my therapist, the University of Utah professor I was telling you about. She told me flat out, no matter what I said to them, I had to tell them the truth, no matter how awful it was. And that's the thing, I wanted to lie to them. I wanted to tell them that their father had fallen and hit his head or had a heart attack, anything but the truth. But Anne told me what to say, and I said it verbatim. Your father died from depression. He took his own life. My son was 10, and my daughter was 13. How did he think that this was the solution? Because above all else, Travis loved his children. Had he understood the pain that he was inflicting upon them, he never would have done it. Now, I will spend the rest of my life trying to keep my children alive, because now they're more likely to die the same way. So not only am I mourning a past I cannot change, I am terrified of my future and what suicide brings with it. Despite that, people say to me, suicide is selfish. And I will say to you, Travis honestly thought he was being selfless. That bully in his brain made him believe that we would be better off without him. It would be comical if it weren't so tragic. But I would say to you, suicide is not selfish. It is just really stupid. Suicide will not get you the relief that you're looking for. It only causes a whole other cascade of problems that the people you love most in the world have to pick up and carry for you. Don't leave that legacy to your family or to your children. I'm telling you this, but in reality, I'm talking to him. I'm giving you the plea that I wasn't able to give him, to convince you, whomever you are, please, don't take your life. Think about the people you love. They will not be better off without you. I know. A year's gone by, and a birthday has passed. These are the gifts he left me that morning. I can't open them. They're a painful reminder of what was meant to be. A life lived together.